Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Satashishimat, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Samstapakacharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So this morning we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, titled Parīkṣit, Cursed by a Brahmana Boy, texts 17 and 18. Text 17 is not on the board, so I'll just read that text along with translation and purport. And it's a small purport, and then we'll go on to text 18. Text 17. Tanna param puṇyam asaṁvṛta-artham ākhyānam atyadbhuta-yoga-niṣṭham ākhyāhi anantācaritopapannaṁ pārīkṣitam bhāgavatābhirāmam. Translation. Thus, please narrate to us the narrations of the unlimited, for they are purifying and supreme. They were spoken to Mahārāja Parīkṣit, and they are very dear to the pure devotees, being full of bhakti-yoga. Purport. What was spoken to Mahārāja Parīkṣit and what is very dear to the pure devotees is Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is mainly full of the narrations of the activities of the Supreme Unlimited, and therefore it is the signs of bhakti-yoga or the devotional service of the Lord. Thus it is para or supreme, because although it is enriched with all knowledge and religion, it is specifically enriched with the devotional service of the Lord. Text 18. Sūta uvacha aho vayam janma bhritodya asma vriddhanuvrityapi viloma jataha daushkulyam adhim vidunoti shigram mahattamanam abhidhana-yogaha Suta uvacha aho vayam janma bhritodyasasma vriddhanuvrityapi viloma jataha dauskulyamadhim vidunoti shigram mahattamanam abhidhana-yogaha Suta uvacha aho vayam janma bhritodyasma vriddhanuvrityapi viloma jataha dauskulyamadhim vidunoti shigram mahattamanam abhidhana-yogaha Suta uvacha aho vayam janma bhritodyasma vriddhanuvrityapi viloma jataha dauskulyamadhim vidunoti shigram mahattamanam abhidhana-yogaha Suta uvacha aho vayam janma bhritodyasma vriddhanuvrityapi viloma jataha dauskulyamadhim vidunoti shigram mahattamanam abhidhana-yogaha Shigram abhidhana-yogaha Vaishnavis aho vriddhanuvrityapi viloma jataha dauskulyamadhim vidunoti shigram mahattamanam abhidhana-yogaha Suta uvacha Suta Goswami said, Aho, how, Vayam, we, Janma Britaha, promoted in birth, Adya, today, Ha, clearly, Asma, have become, Vriddha Anuvritya, by serving those who are advanced in knowledge. Api, although, Viloma Jataha, born in a mixed caste. Dauskulyam, disqualification of birth. Adim, sufferings. Vidunoti, purifies. Shigram, very soon. Mahattamanam, of those who are great. Abhidhana, conversation. Yogaha, connection. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Sri Suta Goswami said, O God, although we are born in a mixed caste, we are still promoted in birthright simply by serving and following the great who are advanced in knowledge. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can without delay cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from lower births. Purport. Suta Goswami did not take his birth in a Brahmana family. He was born in a family of mixed caste or an uncultured low family. But because of higher association like Sri Shukadeva Goswami and the great rishis of Naimisharanya, certainly the disqualification of inferior birth was washed off. Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu followed this principle in pursuance of the Vedic usages, and by his transcendental association, he elevated many lowborn or those disqualified by birth or action to the status of devotional service and established them in the position of acharyas or authorities. He clearly stated that any man, whatever he may be, whether a Brahmana or Shudra by birth, or a householder or mendicant in the order of society, if he is conversant with the signs of Krishna, he can be accepted as an acharya or guru, a spiritual master. Suta Goswami learned the signs of Krishna from great rishis and authorities like Shukadeva and Vyasadeva, and he was so qualified that even the sages of Naimisharanya eagerly wanted to hear from him the signs of Krishna in the form of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So he had the double association of great souls by hearing and preaching. Transcendental signs or the signs of Krishna has to be learned from the authorities, and when one preaches the signs, he becomes still more qualified. So Suta Goswami had both the advantages, and thus undoubtedly he was completely freed from all disqualifications of low birth and mental agonies. This verse definitely proves that Srila Shukadeva Goswami did not refuse to teach Suta Goswami about the transcendental signs, nor did the sages of Naimisharanya refuse to hear lessons from him because of his inferior birth. This means that thousands of years ago, there was no bar to learning or preaching the transcendental signs because of inferior birth. The rigidity of the so-called caste system in Hindu society became prominent within only 100 years or so, when the number of Dvijabandhus or disqualified men in the families of higher castes increased. Lord Sri Caitanya revived the original Vedic system, and he elevated Thakur Haridas to the position of Namacharya, or the authority in the preaching of the holy name of the Lord. Although His Holiness Srila Haridas Thakura was pleased to appear in a family of Mohammedans. Such is the power of pure devotees of the Lord. The Ganges water is accepted as pure, and one can become purified after taking a bath in the waters of the Ganges. But as far as the great devotees of the Lord are concerned, they can purify a degraded soul even by being seen by the lowborn, and what to speak of association. Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to purify the whole atmosphere of the polluted world by sending qualified preachers all over the world, and it remains with the Indians to take up this task scientifically and thus do the best kind of humanitarian work. The mental diseases of the present generation are more acute than bodily diseases. It is quite fit and proper to take up the preaching of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam all over the world without delay. Mahattamānam abhidana also means dictionary of great devotees, or a book full of the words of great devotees. Such a dictionary of the words of great devotees and those of the Lord are in the Vedas and allied literatures, specifically the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to Canto 1, Chapter 18 in the matter of Parīkṣit cursed by a Brahmana boy. Text 18. Om ajnānatimirandasya gyanāñjana shalakaya chakshurun militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave namaha. Shri Caitanya manobishtam sthapitam yena bhutale swayam rupakadāmahyam dadati sva padantikam. Vandeham Shri Guro Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tamsajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Caitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagan Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swaminiti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Pradayine Gaurakatha Dhamadaya Nagaragramatharine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Gopi Paranadhanadase Iti Namine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yatkripatamaham bande Shri Gurudintarinam yatkripatamaham bande Paramanandamadavam Shri Caitanya Ishwaram Katanchana smrite yasmin dushkaram sukaram bhavet smrite vipritam syat Shri Caitanyam namamitam. We see in the previous purport, text 17, and here Srila Prabhupada uses the expression signs of bhakti yoga. He repeatedly uses that. So if we understand this concept of the signs of bhakti yoga, then we'll be able to understand this purport very nicely. So why is Krishna consciousness called the signs of bhakti yoga? Rather, Prabhupada would also sometimes call it as the highest signs. So we'll come to that. So first of all, in Vedic literatures, the term that is used for direct perception is pratyaksha. Pratyaksha, we know that, right? That's the basis of science as we know it. It is based on direct perception. Not only is it based on direct perception, but also the assumption is all human beings can perceive in the same manner in general. For example, here there is a microphone. Now everyone in this room, I'm sure, is perceiving this object as a microphone. It is not that someone in this room is perceiving this as a glass of water. No one is perceiving this as a rose bush or something. Everyone is perceiving this as a microphone. So there is the common direct perception of all human beings, which is that this is a microphone. So it is based on direct perception. Not only is it based on direct perception, it is based on objective direct perception. Objective direct perception means everybody says the same thing. Subjective means each person would say differently. So here everybody is going to say this is a microphone. So therefore we call it objective. So objective, science is based on objective direct perception. So just like for this science, all that is needed is that you have to be a human being. Animals cannot we don't even know how they perceive. So maybe scientists have figured out something how they perceive, but we are referring to human beings. So when we talk of direct perception, we are also referring to something which is common to all human beings. So Krishna consciousness is common to whom? That's very important, because first of all, science is common to all human beings. Krishna consciousness is common to whom? Krishna consciousness is common to all spirit souls. So here we are talking about human beings in the context of modern science, but in the context of Krishna consciousness, first of all, we determine to whom is it common. So it is common to all spirit souls. Then the next question comes up about objectivity. Is it objective? So Krishna, in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the 2nd verse, he says, Rajavidya Rajaguhyam. Rajavidya, king of all education. So Prabhupada sometimes would call the highest science. Pavitram idam uttamam. Then he says, Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam susukam kartum avyayam. Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam. That same word, Pratyaksha, Krishna uses. Pratyaksha means direct perception. Dharmyam. So this process of Krishna consciousness is directly perceived. Who perceives it directly? All the souls can perceive this process directly. So, and then Krishna goes on to explain the experience. He says that because it is directly perceivable, religion, dharma, okay, let me put it as dharma. Prabhupada sometimes loosely translates, deliberately translates dharma sometimes as religion. Although he explains religion could mean beliefs, but for our purposes, let's put it as religion. So it's directly perceivable. Directly perceivable. And the next thing that Krishna says is, it is susukam. It is extremely pleasurable because it is directly perceivable. Now, just like modern science, when we directly perceive something, there is a certain experience that goes with it. It gives a certain kind of joy, happiness. Like suppose if you were to read that if you combine two chemicals, it produces a certain result. You have some knowledge of it, but when you actually see it in a laboratory, you're experiencing it, oh, it's happening. So there is a certain kind of joy. Or for example, it is experience which gives a certain kind of joy, that perception. Like for example, in India, at least in the past, there was this thing that the thing to do is to go to America. At least in the past, now it's different, but at least in the past it used to be like that. Now, most of the students who would aspire to go to America have only heard about it. But once they reach the shores of America, once they land in America, then they directly experience it. And when they experience it, that is what produces joy. Not just the thought, okay, America is nice, whatever one may hear, but it does not produce that experience of joy. So, here in Krishna consciousness is the same thing. Academic scholars can read the Bhagavad Gita. They can do so many things. First of all, they may not even understand what it is. Even if they theoretically understand, unless you practice, you cannot perceive it. So, unless you go to America, you cannot perceive it, right? So, Krishna says, this is susukam kartumayam. So, you can directly experience it. And what kind of experience is it? The experience is susukam, extreme happiness. So, when Prabhupada says that Krishna consciousness is a science, he is not trying to simply appeal to some modern audience. He actually means it. Krishna consciousness is the highest science, Rajavidya, because you can directly perceive it. Pratyakshaavagamam dharmyam. Now, then we may think that is Krishna consciousness really perceivable like that? Really? I mean, can we see Krishna standing in this threefold bending form? Are we perceiving that? And so many other things that we read about, are we perceiving it? So, isn't it different from modern science? Is it really true? Even in modern science, there are many things which you can directly perceive, and there are many things you cannot directly perceive. There are conditions. For example, if we have to mix hydrogen and oxygen to get water, it's not that you get two gases mixed and it becomes water. You have conditions, pressure conditions, temperature conditions. So like that, there are conditions under which a certain result is produced. So, like that, there are many things in Krishna consciousness you can perceive without any condition. Just like science, many things you can perceive without condition. But there are some things which you can perceive, or rather many things which you can only perceive under conditions. So what are those conditions? We have the 4 regulative principles. Now quite often devotees may think that these are moral principles. The 4 regulative principles, they are moral principles. You have to be good. Therefore these principles are there. Actually, these principles are not merely not merely moral principles. They are principles of perception, principles of knowledge. How is it principles of knowledge? I'll just read to you a small purport from earlier on, from the 3rd chapter. The Prabhupada explains this very beautifully. He explains that this is from this is from the 3rd chapter, text 44. O learned Brahmanas, when Sutta Goswami is speaking, actually, Sutta Goswami is speaking. Here also Sutta Goswami is speaking. This text also Sutta Goswami is speaking. O learned Brahmanas, when Shukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there, in the presence of Emperor Parīkṣit, I heard him with rapt attention. And thus by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from the great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I have learned from him and as I have realized it. Now, first Prabhupada in this purport explains about the qualification of the speaker. Then he says, later on he says, in the end of the purport, the secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning, notice this, at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Sri Krishna in person in the pages of the Bhagavatam. So we can see how the regulative principles are tied in with perception. So the four regulative principles are not just moral principles. The principles of perception, the principles of principles of vidya, knowledge. So they are very important, because no one can hear with rapt attention unless one is pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind unless one is pure in action, and no one can be pure in action unless one is pure in eating, sleeping, mating and defending. So when one follows this condition, then one can perceive Krishna in person in every page of the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada says right from the beginning, he says. So just as in science there are conditions, you can't perceive everything, but you have certain things you can only perceive under conditions. Similarly, there are many things in Krishna consciousness which we can perceive only under conditions. So, if you look at it, Krishna consciousness is not a system of belief. Just like say, okay, America exists. You need to go to America and experience it. You may believe it, but unless you go and experience it, it's not perception. So Krishna consciousness is not a belief system. It is a system of direct perception. Pratyakshaavagamam dharmyam. Now then we may wonder, what about other processes, right? What about other processes? This process can be directly perceived by everyone independent of one's qualifications. Okay, so that is the point here, that right from the beginning there is no qualification. It does not matter. Just like if in this room, it does not matter whether you are a man or a woman or whether you are Indian, a Westerner, or whether you are tall, whether you are short, whether you are thin, whether you are obese, anything in between. It does not matter for you to perceive this microphone. Correct? It does not matter. So like that, you can directly perceive this microphone. So like that, it does not matter at what stage you are in to directly perceive Krishna consciousness. Because one gets born into a lower family based on the modes. It's not that one just gets randomly born somewhere. One gets born into a lower family based on the modes. One gets born into a higher family based on the modes. So it is a very progressive path, slowly, and finally that perception happens. Finally that perception happens. But in Krishna consciousness, the perception happens right in the beginning. Right in the beginning. So, as far as Krishna consciousness is concerned, there is no bar. So, all these other things, there is a bar for other processes. But for the process of bhakti, there is no bar. Because it's directly puts you in touch with the Supreme Lord. It's a direct activity of the soul. So in that sense, although others also are signs, but it does not directly put you in touch with the Supreme Lord. So it's not the highest science. It is a science. It will take some time, many lifetimes, millions of lifetimes. Finally you come to direct perception. But here, Krishna consciousness, you get direct perception right from the very beginning. Right from the very beginning. And now I'll just go on to a small part in this purport where Prabhupada mentions about the word nivishta in this 1344, which I was reading. Prabhupada explains the word nivishta means Suta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. So notice that Prabhupada uses the word drank the juice of Bhagavatam. What is the meaning of this juice of Bhagavatam? Prabhupada explains in the Nectar of Devotion that Krishna consciousness, in fact the expression Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada got from Rupa Goswami, which is from the specific expression Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati. Krishna Bhakti Rasa. And Prabhupada explains rasa means juice, mellow. So the word Krishna consciousness derived from that expression Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati, which means that consciousness, mati means consciousness or mind, whatever, consciousness which is saturated, bhavita, with what? Krishna Bhakti Rasa, the juice of Krishna consciousness. So the juice of Krishna consciousness one receives by hearing from a pure devotee. So that's why it is explained that there are some things where there is no condition, right? You just hear from a pure, unadulterated devotee, from an eternal associate of the Lord, immediately you feel some experience. You get an experience, you get a taste. That's why it is said there is no qualification. You just have to go and just, in fact it said here, Prabhupada explains in the purport that Ganges you have to make an effort, at least take a dip in the Ganges. But pure devotees, even by seeing them you get a taste. It is explained that the highest devotee is one, just by seeing the person you begin to chant the holy names. Because he's so advanced, just by seeing him you begin to pick up your beads and chant. So this is the nature of the saintly person. There's no condition. Anybody who comes and gets drawn towards Krishna. So then we may think, okay, if in this process of science in Krishna consciousness, we get a taste, Krishna Bhakti Rasa. So then what about all our conditionings? Does it matter? Does it really matter? Because here is speaking about these things are not an obstacle. But is it really an obstacle? Are we experiencing that taste on a continual basis? Are we experiencing that taste? Or is it that because I have this circumstance and I have this and that and I'm born in this part of the world and therefore it's an obstacle, or what is it? Are all these things really an obstacles in the path of bhakti? If it is a science, it should not be, right? It is not. So how do we understand it? So Prabhupada explains, he created the process of Krishna consciousness. He gave us a package. What do we do in that package? We rise early in the morning by 3:34. We attend Mangalarati. We chant japa. We greet the deities. We hear Bhagavatam class. We do all this. So that the taste of Krishna consciousness that we get, if we have to have stability of taste and expansion of taste, we need to work for it. We need to work for it. Just like, we could say, some devotees have difficulties. Why? Why are they having difficulty? Because for us, in general, sense gratification is spontaneous. It's very spontaneous. There's nothing, which is the easiest thing, sense gratification. But Krishna consciousness is Although originally spontaneous, we have not come to the spontaneous platform. How is it possible if it is spontaneous? What is the meaning of we are not spontaneous yet? It's already there in the heart, right? Why is it not spontaneous? So the example can be given. Sometimes when small babies are born, they cannot breathe. Breathing is spontaneous. It's a spontaneous thing. So sometimes the doctor, they move the baby, they spank the baby, they do different things to make it breathe. Then the baby starts breathing. So although breathing is natural, it has to be brought out by a certain process when it is not coming out. So like that, although we are eternal associates of the Lord, nevertheless, that attraction for the Lord, the spontaneous attraction for the Lord does not generate instantaneously. We get some attraction, but then our sense gratification is more spontaneous for us. So then what we need to do, we need to practice the process of regulative devotional service. So as we keep practicing more and more and more and more, we come to that platform of spontaneous devotional service, which overwhelms, which overpowers the spontaneous sense gratification of it. So then what is the useless sense gratification? So that is the point, that we may experience Krishna consciousness in the beginning, I mean spontaneously without any condition, but to maintain it, we need to work at it. So we have the process of first Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and that leads to Raganuga sadhana bhakti, which is performed on a spontaneous platform. So for that there is no bar. So it is not that because we are struggling with this condition, that condition, whatever anybody's condition may be, if one just follows the program that Srila Prabhupada has given, one is definite to reach the platform of spontaneous devotional service. And then every day it is just direct perception only. I mean, it's not that, okay, some direct perception is there, but you're also struggling with sense perceptions and other things. No, every day then it becomes a festival of direct perception of Krishna. Okay, Padmapad Prabhu is personally sitting here, and it is 8:45. So I'll have to stop to ask for any questions or comments. Yes, Mataji.
Thank you. In today's purport, it's mentioned about people from India to preach the cult. I don't remember the exact words. Can you repeat that?
Yes, Prabhupada is writing that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to purify the whole atmosphere of the polluted world by sending qualified preachers all over the world, and it remains with the Indians to take up this task scientifically, and thus do the best kind of humanitarian work.
Amazing statement. So the point is, we see that so many devotees from India are so attached to deity worship at home. You know that is a fact, right?
They're attached to deity worship at home? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. In general, I've seen that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But here, Srila Prabhupada is asking for preaching, and Lord Caitanya personally requested about Hari Nam Sankirtan.
Yes, Maharaj.
So what are your suggestions to encourage devotees from this continent to take up these two tasks? Thank you.
I don't see the fact that they're worshipping deity as any obstacle, unless, like Prabhupada said, that if you have deities at home and you're close to a temple, then you need to attend the Mangalarti in the temple. You cannot say that, okay, I have to do Mangalarti for my deities. So that cannot happen. That is only for people who are living far away from a temple, who cannot have the privilege and opportunity to come to the temple. But otherwise, the temple deity, Prabhupada specifically says this in one place. And so, in general, I don't see that as an obstacle, because Prabhupada said that our process has two things. One is the Bhagavata Marg and the Pancharatrika Marg, and they should go parallelly. It should not this thing. So, deity worship is purifying because you treat the Lord as a person, you do certain things to the Lord as a person. So that's part of our process. But I don't see that as an obstacle if people have faith in what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, and they have faith in what Prabhupada is saying, that we should. Here also he says, in fact, that transcendental signs are the signs of Krishna, as we learn from the authorities, and when preaches the signs, he becomes still more qualified. So our process is practice and preach. Practice alone is not part of the, we don't represent the Krishna conscious movement if we just practice alone. We have to practice and preach. So that is the mandate of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Lord himself, who knows better than all of us put together here what is the best thing. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada pushed the same thing, that what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted, he pushed it. So therefore, all of us should, those of us who are born in India should take that very seriously. Of course, it's not that those who are not born in India should not consider that. They should also preach. But especially, it means especially, it's not, I mean, nobody has an excuse. Those born in India, they have to think about how to spread this movement around the whole world. Yes, Prajay. Press that, yeah, you can press that.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, thank you very much for the class. Prabhu, just one clarification on the 4 regulative principles. You were saying that in order to, I don't know from which 3?
1344.
1344. Maybe I have to note down that. So you were saying, my question is that, is just 4 regulative principles enough in order to perceive? You're saying that is the basis. 4 regulative principles you follow, then your actions are nice. Then you're able to perceive. That's what.
Yes. Without 4 regulative principles, you cannot hear with rapt attention. Or are there more? You're asking? Okay. So, you're saying that, okay, you may be following the 4 regulative principles, but despite following the 4 regulative principles, you may still be not able to hear with rapt attention. Okay. Now, when it says 4 regulative principles, if you notice Prabhupada's original letter that he posted after the first group of candidates were initiated, Prabhupada writes a few things. He says, no idle talk, no frivolous sports. So there are different things that he mentions there. So apart from, I mean, these are also considered as part of the regulative principles. So why is he saying that? Because all our disturbances come from them only ultimately. It could be coming from, it could be coming from idle talk, it could be coming from frivolous sports, following, I mean, sometimes devotees follow IPL and different things, just frivolous sports. So that obviously disturbs the mind. Similarly, I mean, idle talk, just talking things irrelevant to Krishna consciousness, politics and this and that, and how to save the world, how to save India, so many different things. So these are all part of idle talk. The only way to save everybody, India, world, is by Krishna consciousness. There's no other way, actually. So, because of our engagement, if you actually carefully look at it, we can always trace it to one of these things. But if the anxiety is due to, oh, I need to serve Krishna very nicely. Okay, like Prabhupada said, when they were constructing, I think it was Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, I think it was Gunarno Prabhu. Anyway, one devotee went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I'm not able to chant my rounds attentively. I'm thinking about cement and how these contractor is trying to steal and all those things. Prabhupada said, sometimes when I think of it, even I get disturbed. He says, of course, Prabhupada is a pure devotee. But the point is, that activity has been mandated by Prabhupada, and while performing the activity, one is, due to absorption in that activity, one is not able to do the other one. That's fine. That is a different thing altogether. That's not mundane anxiety. That's anxiety for Krishna. That's okay. But we should be careful about mundane things, not about spiritual things. We have anxiety about, okay, we need to schedule a class tomorrow. Who will be the speaker? The speaker has to speak properly. I mean, if you have all these kind of anxiety, that's okay. That's not a problem. That's not due to. So, when it says rapt attention, basically it's referring to not just hearing Bhagavatam. It means rapt attention in the activities of Krishna consciousness. That is also rapt attention, right? You're putting your mind into it, or you're putting your heart and soul into it, and thinking about it. Therefore, some other activity you may not be able to perform because with that same rapt attention. But the fact is of rapt attention. That is the idea. Yes, Vijay. Just press that. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you for a wonderful lecture. Prabhuji, you said that we should have, spiritual anxiety, and in doing many of the services, sometimes we feel anxious, sometimes we feel worries, and that is because of our service. That is our spiritual anxiety. But sometimes, while performing our service,
Okay, just let me repeat it so that because you're not audible. So you're saying that you can understand about spiritual anxiety, but sometimes when you're performing services, some of the things are somewhat material anxieties also. Material anxiety is remotely connected to our material path. Example? Okay, you're involved in a preaching program, sometimes you invite a government official. Whether they will come or not. What do you mean government is suitable to our objective? Anybody who promotes Krishna consciousness is suitable, no? So how do we say, how do you determine suitability? Prabhupada is very open to anybody who promotes our Krishna consciousness, correct? Okay. Correct. Mr. N. Yeah. Devotees went to Bal Thackeray. Yes. Now basically Prabhupada was, this utility is the principle. Whoever can help our cause, we are welcome. Why not? So, okay, so basically you're talking about government official, whether they will come or not. But that's a spiritual anxiety, what is the thing? You're trying to serve Krishna, right? You're not trying to bring that official so that you can stand next to him and take a photograph or selfie, So then, what is the problem? There's no problem there. Spiritual anxiety only. See, first of all, we're dealing with the material world. So whatever you're dealing is going to be material only. Just that you're going to engage it in Krishna's service, right? That you cannot avoid. Even matter we are trying to engage in Krishna's service, matter, people, all material only, right? So as long as it is done for the sake of Krishna, it is spiritual. But if you do it for our sake, that is material. Okay, so I can hear the bell ringing. So we'll have to stop today's class. Okay. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.